Right now, today, while you are watching this video, inflation is taking money out of your pocket in ways that will never appear on a receipt, never show up as a line item on a bill, and never trigger the kind of obvious sticker shock that makes people pay attention. It is quiet, it is constant, and it is far more expensive than most people realize. Most people think about inflation in terms of the obvious examples: groceries costing more than they used to, gas prices climbing, rent going up at renewal time. Those are real and they matter, but they are also the visible tip of a much larger iceberg. There is an entire category of inflation's cost that operates beneath the surface, embedded in the size of products, the value of cash sitting in your bank account, the structure of your salary, and the silent erosion of savings goals you have not adjusted in years. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the hidden ways inflation is costing you money every single day, the mechanisms most people never notice, the real numbers behind them, and what you can actually do to protect yourself. Let's get into it. Hidden Cost 1. Shrinkflation. The most literal hidden cost of inflation is something economists call shrinkflation, when manufacturers reduce the quantity or size of a product while keeping the price the same, rather than visibly raising the price that would effectively raise prices, without triggering the negative consumer reaction that an obvious price increase would cause. The examples are everywhere once you start looking for them. A bag of chips that used to weigh 10 ounces now weighs 8.5 ounces at the same price. A roll of toilet paper with fewer sheets per roll. A chocolate bar that is slightly thinner than it used to be. A bottle of laundry detergent with 10% less liquid inside an identically sized bottle. Individually, each of these changes seems trivial. Collectively, across the dozens of household products most people purchase regularly, shrinkflation can represent a meaningful and completely invisible increase in your true cost of living that does not show up in the price you see on the shelf. The defense against shrinkflation is simple, but requires a habit most people do not currently have: checking the unit price rather than the total price when shopping, particularly for products you buy repeatedly. Most grocery store shelves display a price per ounce or per unit alongside the total price, and tracking that number over time reveals shrinkflation clearly even when the sticker price has not moved. Comparing the unit price today to what you remember from a year or two ago is often genuinely shocking. Hidden Cost 2. The erosion of cash sitting in low-interest accounts. This is one of the largest hidden inflation costs and one of the easiest to fix, which makes it particularly frustrating that so many people are still paying it unnecessarily. Money sitting in a traditional bank savings account earning 0.01% to 0.05% interest is losing real value every single day that inflation runs above that rate, which it essentially always does. Here is the math made concrete. If you have $20,000 sitting in a traditional savings account earning 0.05% interest and inflation is running at 3% annually, your money is losing approximately 2.95% of its real purchasing power every year. On $20,000, that is roughly $590 of purchasing power evaporating annually, not because you spent it, but because it sat in an account that pays you almost nothing, while the cost of everything it could buy continues to rise. Over 5 years, that same $20,000 sitting in a low-interest account loses thousands of dollars in real purchasing power compared to if it had simply been moved to a high-yield savings account at an online bank. This hidden cost is entirely avoidable, and yet an enormous percentage of cash in the banking system sits in accounts earning a fraction of what is readily available elsewhere. The fix requires no investment knowledge, no risk tolerance, and no complexity, simply moving emergency funds and short-term savings to a high-yield savings account at an online bank. The fact that this single, simple action goes unaddressed for so many people represents one of the most quietly expensive financial oversights in personal finance. Hidden Cost 3. Wage growth that lags behind real inflation. Many people receive an annual raise and feel, reasonably, that their financial position is improving, but the hidden cost here lies in the gap between the raise percentage and the real inflation rate affecting their specific cost of living, A gap that can mean a raise is actually a pay cut in real terms. If you receive a 3% annual raise and overall inflation is running at 4%, your real inflation-adjusted income has actually decreased by approximately 1%, even though the number on your paycheck went up. This is especially costly because it does not feel like a pay cut. The dollar amount increased, which triggers a psychological sense of progress, even while purchasing power quietly declined. Over several years of raises that lag behind inflation, a person can experience a meaningful decline in real income while feeling, based on the nominal numbers, that their financial position has been improving the entire time. This hidden cost is particularly relevant when negotiating raises or evaluating job offers. The right question is never simply what is the raise percentage, but what is the raise percentage relative to current inflation, and does this raise represent genuine growth in purchasing power or simply a nominal increase that fails to keep pace with rising costs? Tracking your real inflation-adjusted income over time, rather than just the nominal number on your paycheck, gives a far more accurate picture of whether your financial position is actually improving. If these hidden costs are things you have never thought about quite this way before, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. New videos every week, always practical, always designed to show you what is actually happening with your money beneath the surface. Now let's get into a few more of these.
Hidden cost 4. Outdated savings goals and retirement targets. Many people set a savings goal or a retirement target years ago and have never adjusted it for inflation since. This creates a hidden cost in the form of a target that looks achievable on paper, but is actually significantly insufficient by the time it is reached, because the purchasing power required to live comfortably has grown while the target number stayed frozen in the past. Consider someone who, 10 years ago, calculated that they would need $800,000 to retire comfortably based on their expected expenses at the time. If they have not adjusted that number for inflation since, and inflation has averaged 3% annually over those 10 years, the equivalent purchasing power of $800,000 today would actually require approximately $1,075,000 to maintain the same standard of living that the original $800,000 target was designed to provide. Someone diligently saving toward the original, unadjusted $800,000 figure will arrive at retirement with meaningfully less real purchasing power than they originally planned for, even if they hit their savings target exactly. This hidden cost applies to any long-term financial goal, a home down payment target, a college savings goal, a retirement number that was calculated at one point in time and never revisited. The fix is straightforward. Revisit major financial targets at least every 2 to 3 years and adjust them for cumulative inflation since they were originally set. A goal that does not account for inflation is not really a fixed target. It is a moving target disguised as a fixed one, and the gap between the two grows larger and more costly with every year it goes unaddressed. Hidden cost 5. Bracket creep and tax thresholds. Inflation interacts with the tax system in ways that create hidden costs many people never notice, particularly when tax brackets, deduction thresholds, or benefit eligibility limits do not adjust fully or promptly for inflation. In some tax systems and benefit programs, income thresholds are adjusted for inflation annually, which helps prevent this issue. But many specific provisions within tax codes, certain deduction limits, contribution caps for various accounts, eligibility thresholds for specific credits or programs are either adjusted with a lag, adjusted only periodically rather than annually, or in some cases not adjusted for inflation at all, unless legislation specifically changes them. When wages rise due to inflation, but these specific thresholds do not rise correspondingly, people can find themselves pushed into less favorable tax treatment or losing eligibility for benefits purely as a function of nominal wage growth that does not represent any real increase in their purchasing power. This phenomenon, broadly known as bracket creep, represents a hidden cost because it can result in a higher effective tax burden or reduced benefit eligibility, even when a person's real inflation-adjusted financial position has not actually improved. Staying aware of which specific thresholds in your tax and benefits situation are inflation-adjusted and which are not is a worthwhile exercise, particularly during periods of higher inflation when this effect becomes more pronounced.
Hidden cost 6. The inflation tax on debt you are not carrying. This one runs counter to most of what we've discussed and is worth understanding specifically because it reveals an asymmetry in how inflation affects different financial positions. While inflation erodes the value of cash and fixed income assets, it actually reduces the real burden of fixed-rate debt over time, which means that someone with no debt at all is, in one very specific sense, missing out on an inflation benefit that debt holders receive. If you have a fixed-rate mortgage at a rate below the current inflation rate, the real value of your remaining debt balance is shrinking every year in inflation-adjusted terms, even as you make the same nominal monthly payment. Your income, assuming it grows at least roughly with inflation, becomes relatively larger compared to a debt balance that does not grow at all. This is part of why financial advisors often distinguish between good debt, low fixed-rate debt used to acquire an appreciating or useful asset, and bad debt, such as high-interest credit card debt, where the interest rate typically exceeds inflation and therefore does not provide this same benefit. This is not an argument for taking on debt unnecessarily. It is simply an important piece of context for understanding that inflation's effects are not uniformly negative across every financial position. It specifically erodes the value of cash and fixed-rate savings instruments while providing a modest, often overlooked benefit to holders of low-rate fixed debt. Understanding this asymmetry helps explain why purely cash-based financial strategies underperform during inflationary periods, while a thoughtfully structured mix of appreciating assets and strategic low-rate debt can actually benefit from the same inflationary environment that punishes cash holders. Hidden cost 7. Subscription and service price creep. The final hidden cost is one that has become increasingly relevant as subscription-based services have grown to take up a larger share of household spending. Streaming services, software subscriptions, gym memberships, and similar recurring charges frequently increase their prices gradually over time, often by amounts small enough that individual increases go unnoticed, while the cumulative effect over several years represents a meaningful increase in fixed monthly costs. The defense here is the same lifestyle audit we have discussed in other contexts, periodically reviewing all recurring subscriptions, checking current pricing against what you remember paying when you signed up, and making a deliberate decision about whether each service still justifies its current, likely increased cost. Many people are paying significantly more for the same subscription bundle than they were several years ago without ever having made an active decision to accept those increases. The price simply crept up gradually enough that no single increase ever triggered the impulse to cancel.
7 hidden ways inflation costs you money every single day. Shrinkflation reduces the quantity of products while keeping prices the same, hiding price increases behind unchanged shelf prices. Cash sitting in low-interest accounts loses real purchasing power continuously, even though the number never goes down. Wage growth that lags real inflation can mean a raise is actually a pay cut in purchasing power terms. Outdated savings and retirement goals that were never adjusted for inflation become insufficient without anyone noticing. Bracket creep can push people into less favorable tax or benefit positions purely from nominal wage growth. The inflation asymmetry between cash and fixed-rate debt reveals that inflation's effects are not uniform across every financial position. And gradual subscription price increases compound into meaningfully higher fixed costs that almost nobody actively reviews. None of these hidden costs are things you were likely to notice without specifically looking for them, which is exactly what makes them so effective at quietly eroding financial progress. Now that you know where to look, each one of them is addressable with relatively simple, specific actions. The resources in the description below include tools for tracking real inflation-adjusted savings goals and calculators for evaluating whether your current accounts and investments are keeping pace with inflation. Those are worth exploring if any of today's hidden costs apply to your own situation. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 7 hidden costs surprised you the most. I read every single comment and I love hearing which of these land. And please subscribe to this channel if you have not already. New content every week, always practical, always free. If this video opened your eyes to how inflation operates beneath the surface, the next one closes out this entire series in a powerful way. We are covering the financial decisions that matter more than picking stocks, the foundational choices that determine far more of your long-term financial outcome than any individual investment ever could. It ties together everything we have covered, and I think it is one of the most important videos in this whole collection.